this is BugPowderDust. Thank you once again for joining me, and today's video is going to be about Armoured Warfare as promised. Not going to get any games from me in here, but I'd just like to go over the 19, count them, 19 reasons why I think Armoured Warfare, I wouldn't say is necessarily a better game, but it certainly is, I feel, more enjoyable than World of Tanks for the 19 reasons that I'm going to give you. I think Obsidian are on the right track. The game is in open beta. It's not had years to get it right like Wargaming have with World of Tanks, so there are going to be some deficiencies, but on the whole I think Obsidian are off to a really good start. So if you haven't played Armoured Warfare, but maybe you have played World of Tanks, in terms of actual jumping in and playing the game, there's not a huge amount of difference. The controls are the same. You've got consumables down here, which is the items such as repair kit, fire extinguishers, etc. And you can even put them on the same keys if you want. You can change the key bindings. Some of these things will be very familiar indeed. You'll notice there's a PvE slot, which kind of leads me neatly onto my first point about Armoured Warfare, is that you actually have PvE, player versus environment. And basically you can jump into a game and you can choose an easy contract, a medium contract, or a hard contract, depending on what tier of tank you've got. At the bottom it tells you the name of the map you'll be playing on, or effectively the operation you'll be playing on, the mission. It tells you what bonuses you get depending on what difficulty is and what the objectives are. Now you'll be playing generally in a group of 4 or 5 other players, and you'll be basically playing co-op against the computer AI. So as you'd expect, the AI tanks are not particularly brilliant, as you'd expect, but you do get a lot of them, and they can be quite a challenge, especially on medium and hard levels. So it's actually pretty enjoyable. Now one of the benefits of PvE is that you obviously get money for it, and as you'd expect it's less than in PvP. However, you do get to use to earn experience, and you get to grind up your tank from its stock settings up to unlocking the higher equipment bits and pieces. So you can actually, if you want, if you have a tank you feel is poor in its stock form, or you particularly want to grind a gun or a type of ammo, then you can grind it in PvE only. Personally, I think PvE has its place. I wouldn't play it all the time because there's only so much playing against the computer you can stomach, especially when every single time you play the map the vehicles will spawn in the same place. So after a bit you kind of get to know where they're coming from, and the vehicles do spawn in, they literally teleport and appear. So that may not be your cup of tea. However, if you're just going to get used to the game and you don't want to be that noob player on a team and let the other players down, it's certainly a good place to start. So PvE is definitely a benefit. That's number one, I feel. What else is there? The commanders and the crew setup. Let's talk about that quickly. So in World of Tanks you have your crew members, as you have here, and what happens with them is they gain skills and then they gain perks, and if you want to take them to the next tank you can, but it costs silver or it costs gold if you want to retain their skills or retain an element of their skills. Now what Armoured Warfare does differently is that the crew stay with the tank. So when I get to the end of the grind for the M113 here, the next one up is either the Pattern or the LAV. And if I buy one of those tanks, I get fresh crew, and I start again with the skills that you can see here on the right hand side. However, the commander is switchable, and you'll see that the commander has certain skills. So she has these skills by default, and she can earn extra skills. And the commanders themselves can go up in level, so she's at level 5. They have a selection of commanders, but the point is that your commanders go with the vehicle, or can go with the vehicle. You can switch commanders if you want to. So for instance, on the M113 I have Sabrina Washington, on the M41 also. Let's find one with a different commander in. So here we have Philip Holtzklau. Now he has different bonuses, but he's also level 5. So the point I'm making is that there's no kind of compulsion in order to kind of keep your crew together, or to keep your crew up to speed. You don't have to spend silver or gold. Admittedly, each crew starts at vanilla level, but that's, everyone has that same issue. There's no advantage, there's no spending money on your crew in order to level them up or to keep them at a certain training level. Now what's nice about this is if you sell a tank and you buy it back again later, Let me demonstrate. So if I get to the M113, see my crew have a certain amount of skill there. Okay, so I'm going to sell. Oh, maybe it's actually wait. No, hang on. Yes, that's what I need to do. I need to right click it and do it from there. So sell the 113. Okay, so it's now not in my garage anymore. Now, if I decided at a later date to buy the M113 back, I'll go to the dealers and I'll explain this very quickly. And I want to buy the M113. Right click, choose purchase, click on confirm. The M113 is now back in the garage, and you'll see the crew have retained their skills, which is cool. I really like that. It means that you don't have to keep the tank once you've kind of gone past it. Now, there's no reason not to, because this kind of brings me on to my second point, is that you don't have to pay for garage slots. Garage slots do not cost money in this. So currently in open beta anyway, that may change, but currently at the moment I've got lots and lots of tanks and I've not had to pay for a single garage slot, which I really like. I think that's fantastic. If Obsidian keep that, that's going to be very welcome, and I think that's quite nice indeed. Okay, moving on. There's no barracks, so there's no concept of barracks because the crew, you don't ever have to move the crew about, only the commanders. They kind of exist in this kind of virtual space, I guess. So there's no concept of barracks. You don't have to spend money on barracks or upgrading barracks or doing anything like that. So that, I think, is really quite another important thing, and it's something that Obsidian have done to be benevolent. Basically, there's I quite like that indeed. So what else is good? There's no grind as such. The tech trees are represented by two dealers. One's called Wolfly and the other one's called Shishkin. Wolfly's vehicles, on the whole, I think there's probably a theme running through them. I'm guessing it's probably lightly armoured, but punchy. So we've got the kind of Leopard variant MBTs, kind of the German chassis, if you like, and these are lightly armoured tanks, nice guns, good view range. American MBTs, again, lightly armoured, generally good turrets. BMP, I've not really got into the BMP, so I don't know a great deal about them, apart from that they're fast and they're quite hard hitting. Recon vehicles, XM800T is very nice, very quick, really good view range. You get wheeled destroyers in this, so basically tank destroyers in World of Tanks don't exist per se in this. They're called wheeled destroyers, and these actually have, as you see, wheels rather than tracks. Now, driving these are quite a interesting concept when you first get to them. They drive very differently to tracked vehicles, so it does take some time to get used to them. Now, if we look at Shishkin has the more kind of heavily armoured vehicles, if you like, kind of the Russian main battle tanks. Lots of armour, heavy hitting guns, view range not great, and generally slow to aim, slow to reload. However, Shishkin does have things like West European main battle tanks. So the Chieftain Mark V, the excellent British tank, appears at tier 5. Fire support vehicles, not really unlocked these yet. I've not been playing for a great deal of time. The Scorpion's good fun. It's fast, fires punchy, high explosive rounds, as does the Sheridan. And then you've got the artillery as well. So, how do you unlock these vehicles? Well, basically, once you've unlocked a section, and I'll come to that in a second, you progress through the tanks in the normal way. So let's look at the T62. When you get to the end of the grind for the T62, you go on to the T64. And how is this represented? Let's click on the T62. You'll see this bar at the top. Now that gets higher and higher as you earn experience. When you get to the end, you unlock the T64, as you can see here, which I've done. Let's get to the T64. Where's the T64? There it is. And as you can see, I'm a kind of quarter of the way through, maybe, the T64, getting to the T72. So that's not really anything unusual. You've got the usual global experience, etc. I'm not going to go into that too heavily because I'm sure other commentators have done that. Really, what I'm trying to explain here is the benefits of armoured warfare over World of Tanks. So what else is good? Well, there's no premium ammo. No premium ammo whatsoever. Your ammo type you choose in this is actually really important. Let me just click on ammo. So you generally, for most tanks, they have kind of 3 or 4 choices of ammo, but they can carry sometimes 4 or 5. So we've got your normal armour piercing, you've got heat, and you've got HE. So armour piercing generally is blue, which is nice. You can actually just glance at it and see what ammo you've got loaded. Armour piercing, as you'd expect, good penetration, and kind of middling damage. Heat, as you'd expect again, it has lower penetration than armour piercing, but higher damage values. Now, because it's modern warfare, some tanks have specifically got countermeasures in place to stop heat ammo, so you have to pick your targets carefully. Generally, if you're firing at lighter armoured targets, you want to be firing heat, because heat, although it's got a lower pen, has got higher damage. If you fire armour piercing at a lower armoured vehicle, you'll just basically punch straight through it and do much less damage. Now, World of Tanks kind of introduced this with Overmatch, but it doesn't really have that much of effect on gameplay. In this game, it has a big effect. If you fire, say a T-64 fires this shell, 267 penetration at a very lightly armoured target, you'll punch straight through it and you'll do maybe half or a third of the damage that you could potentially do. So picking the right shell in this game is really important, and there's no premium ammo. If you've got a nicely armoured vehicle, you know that people won't just switch to that premium ammo and just punch through you like it was butter. So that's another thing that I think is really good. The other thing about shooting tanks, and this is what makes a difference in armoured warfare compared to World of Tanks, is that, say you're up against a tank, you know its weak spot is a commander hatch. Let me show you an American tank to better demonstrate this. Yeah, massive commander hatch. This is probably weak spot, and if you didn't know on the starship where its weak spots were, you'd probably fire at this thing here. So say you fire at it and you hit and you penetrate the hatch, you're only going to do a fraction of the damage of the shell, because it's not, I guess, considered to be a particularly important area. Unlike World of Tanks, you'd hit this and do your kind of normal damage on a RNG dice roll. It doesn't work that way in armoured warfare, and you kind of expect that. You know, if you're firing up here and you're penetrating, sort of punching through it, you're not going to do as much damage as you'd expect. So I quite like that. I think that's really nice. Right, so what else do we have? Let's talk about base upgrades. Now, Obsidian didn't have to do this. So what they've done here is they've given you this concept of a base, a bit like strongholds on World of Tanks. So this is your personal base, and you can build it up, and every level that you've got increases certain bonuses. So for instance, my recon post is currently at level 5, and it gives me a 5% deduction when I purchase premium time. So if I click on purchase premium time, these prices are adjusted, and they've all had 5% taken off them. Now, I thought when I first saw this was incredibly nice of Obsidian. They don't have to do this. They don't have to give us any money off the cost of premium. So I think that is really quite good. You know, it's one thing that they didn't have to do. So basically, good for them, as I say. Now, I think level 5 is the highest level that you can get to. And you've got other things here like upgrading the command centre. I can't remember exactly what this does because it normally say up here, but I'm in the process of upgrading it. Now, this level 4 upgrade takes 10 days, 240 hours, so I'm kind of halfway through that. What does Airport do? It gives you a 4% deduction on your bonuses for equipment cost. Barracks, crew XP earned, gives you a 4% boost. Down here in the bottom left hand corner is how much it costs to upgrade this to the next level, and I'll come to how you get this. You get 4% off your repair cost at every battle, you get 2% increase on Commander XP earned at level 1, and you get 1% bonus on this basically the silver that you earn per battle. So how do you get this this currency here to upgrade? What you do is over here is your raw materials. I've got 100 currently. You basically get 100 a day. Now when you've got an amount that you can upgrade, you click on it, and you click on upgrade here, top left hand corner. Again, Obsidian didn't have to do this, but what they're doing is encouraging players, I guess, to log in to collect their raw materials, although if you don't log in after a certain amount of time, it just keeps it. You don't lose it if you don't log in that day, which again, I think they could have done that, and people would have just kind of sucked it up and played along. So I think basically top marks to Obsidian for doing this. They didn't have to do this at all, and I'm really impressed with this benevolence. Again, it's open beta. How much of this will see through to the actual release in its current form, I don't know. I suspect what they'll do is that they'll make it so you only earn raw materials if you have a premium account, because that wouldn't be unfair in my eyes. I think that'd be totally fair enough. However, there we go. At the moment, this is how it is, and I think that's actually really cool. Right, what else have we got? Let's talk about XVM, because I think XVM and artillery are the two things about World of Tanks that people would probably say they dislike the most. XVM, or it's actually not XVM which is the problem, it's the ability that you can hook into player stats, using the API that Wargaming provides, and that's what XVM does. It's not XVM's fault. It's you know, it's just using the ability to get those stats and that information. That doesn't occur in Armoured Warfare, and I don't think Obsidian would ever release it. I think they're smart enough, I'm sure they're smart enough, to see the damage that XVM has done to World of Tanks, and I don't think they would release that for this game, and frankly that's fine with me. I have to say, I use XVM when I play World of Tanks. Would I be happy if it wasn't there? Yes. I think everyone would have a level playing field. There'd be less crying about, oh my god, noob team, or there'd be less being targeted. You know, there are certain players who target unicums or good players on the enemy team, which frankly, arguably, is a legitimate tactic. You know, if you're going to fire at somebody, you'd want to fire at the best player on the enemy team, right? But of course, this all makes for a very toxic game. You know, the chat in World of Tanks is generally quite toxic. The forums can be quite toxic, and despite Wargaming's best efforts, hasn't really stamped it out. So, which kind of leads me on to the chat. The chat in game is actually less toxic, much less toxic, I would say, than World of Tanks. You get the odd player who goes on about, oh my god, go back to noob, oh my god, noobs, go back to World of Tanks, and that kind of thing. But it's really kind of few and far between. Nobody knows how good anybody else is, and I think that really does contribute to having less flamey chat, which is great, which I actually really like. Do you know what? I've actually just thought of a 20th thing that is really good about Armoured Warfare that I forgot to add to my list, was that you actually get Sixth Sense, and you get I've forgotten what the perk is. You can actually see what damage has been caused to the enemy tank. Eagle Eye, that's it. So you get Sixth Sense and Eagle Eye off the bat, so you know when you're being targeted, and you know when, well, you know what damage has been caused to the player tank in your reticle, which I think is really cool. Again, very, very useful, and I think in a more faster-paced game like Armoured Warfare, it's really important to have Sixth Sense. It gives you a chance to get away. And on the same basis as Sixth Sense, I mentioned it a minute ago, Artillery. Artillery plays completely differently. You get a different kind of view than in World of Tanks. Artillery is faster aiming, it's faster firing, but it does much less damage in Armoured Warfare. Now, admittedly, my experience is a little bit more limited with artillery, but also counter battery is a lot easier to do. You get a red marker appear whenever the enemy artillery fires, which gives you the approximate location. And if you're quick enough to click on the minimap and jump to that area, you are able to see a render of the enemy artillery moving. But you only have a couple of seconds to do that. Then you can fire a shell and hopefully hit them. So counter battery is a lot more doable in Armoured Warfare than it is in World of Tanks, which means that the players get a break if the artillery players are targeting each other, and it means that if you want to actually go counter battery, you can do that, have actually a very good chance of being effective, unlike in World of Tanks where you're just kind of watching for tracers and hoping that you get it right. So I think Obsidian have implemented that so well, and full marks to them for doing that. I think it does make artillery a lot more bearable. Once you get to tier 4, so there's no artillery at tier 3 or lower, but when you start seeing tier 4 tanks, that's when you get the first artillery. And you can see here, if I go to the dealers, you've got artillery here appearing at, oops, hang on, let me just get myself together here. Artillery appearing at tier 4, the Gvozdika, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, and you've got the M109 again appearing at tier 4. So one thing I forgot to mention earlier on is how do you unlock these sections? If you hover over it, you can see that you have to do 8,300 damage to enemy vehicles less than 150 metres away with Shishkin's vehicles, and then it unlocks this block. So off the bat you get this section unlocked, but unless you've done these things here, so for instance you have to do a certain amount of damage, or with East European MBTs you have to do a certain amount of damage while your vehicle's health is greater than 50%. So you can't just kind of spam your way through the ranks here. And this is another really nice thing about Armoured Warfare, is that you have to basically go through and actually achieve certain things, so you get experience in playing the game, rather than just grind through the ranks. And I guess it's kind of been put into, I guess, maybe be an anti-bot measure, Because with the bots, you just kind of switch it on, grind through it, go AFK. You go AFK, you don't do any of this stuff. You don't do damage within a certain distance, you don't bounce things, you know, and to unlock artillery, you have to fight 50 battles. Okay, so that's not a bot measure, but it's still good enough. West European MBTs was the last thing that I unlocked, because you have to actually bounce incoming shells using Shishkin's vehicles. I mean, that means you've got to be in the thick of it. You can't just sit in the base and do nothing. So, you know, that in itself I think is really, really nice. There's no grinding here to get to the higher tanks. You have to actually achieve things. Fantastic. Good job, Obsidian. Really like it. What else do we have? The economy. That's the other thing that I really like about this. The economy is so much better. Winning or losing is not so much of a big deal in this game. Sure, premium time does make a difference, but if you lose a game, it's not that much of a big deal. I don't know how much the difference is between winning and losing, the difference in the amount of percentage that you get, but certainly it doesn't make a huge difference, and therefore if people lose a game, they're going to be less annoyed about it, and I think keeping your player base happy is a smart thing to do. So if you take away XVM, you take away the annoyance with artillery, the frustration with artillery, and you take away the annoyance and frustration of losing a game, you get a much happier player base. It's all these kind of, it's taking away the little paper cuts. It's not about big gestures, it's about taking away the little annoyances, and I think that adds up to a much better game for people. So that in itself is very good. The economy is good. I mean, I've been on a premium account probably for about a month, and I earned 5-6 million. My last purchase was a Chieftain Mark V, and this was quite expensive. But I've not been playing this game heavily, but with a nice mixture of PvE, PvP, and trying to work hard and do damage and spotting and all the rest of it. It actually works really well. Okay, what else am I talking about? I actually thought of 21 things now, because something else I've just thought about is the generosity of Obsidian. Now, there's been some debate about this, but they recently gave away this tank, the T62 Veteran, which you'll see here. It's got some really cool camo. Now, the T62 Veteran was given away for Veterans Day, which happened very recently. Now, it's identical to the T62, but with camo. You don't get any premium benefits from playing it, and there's no other benefits to the tank. I think the tank is slightly worse, in fact, than the T62. So if you look at the stats up here, and if I just flick backwards and forwards, I think the vision, look at the vision, 432 on the standard T62, and it's 396 on the T62 Veteran. The hit points, I think, are the same. Now, was it damage or pen, maybe? No, damage and pen is the same, but it's the targeting time. So targeting time is 2.82, it's 2.61, so it's slightly worse on that as well. However, they gave you a tier 3 tank. I'm not seeing the drawback with that. They didn't have to do that, and they're not. So basically, what people have been saying is that, well, they've given away a tank, they're not making any money from Veterans Day. That's one way to look at it. Other people were saying, yeah, but it's completely useless, it doesn't do anything, I've got to train my crew up again, you know, it's not a premium tank, wow, wow, wow. Well, it's free, so, you know, whatever. And again, talking about generosity with Obsidian, they had a problem with people's premium time. So what they did, about 2 to 3 weeks after this game went open beta, they basically reset everyone's premium time. So my 17 days of premium time, or was it 30 days, I can't remember, I'd used up about half of it, and they reset that, so I had 30 days again, which I think is pretty cool. Again, it's being generous. I think they are winning the hearts and minds, to be honest. I think that's very nice. Very good of them, to be honest. What else is there? Right, we talked about ammo types, we've talked about... let's talk about RNG. There's less RNG in this game. I don't have any facts and figures to back this up, but RNG plays much less of a thing in Armoured Warfare than it does in World of Tanks. That's what I'm going to say, because I can't back that up with experience, and I can't back it up with figures, but this is what I hear, this is what has been said to me, so if that's a benefit, that's good enough for me. There's no stock grind. You know, right from the word go, you have half decent vehicles. I mean, let's look at the Chieftain, for instance. I don't think it's been upgraded at all. So this Chieftain is mostly stock. Yeah, it's stock. I've not unlocked anything on the Chieftain. Maybe this is a bad example, but the, you know, completely stock. It gets penetration of 300mm, and it gets Actually, I think that's probably the next ammo up, isn't it? So, is that the ammo that I started with? Yeah, it is. So I get 300 pen, 388 damage, and that's stock. So is that bad? No, not really. I mean, again, you just look at the Scorpion. So a tier 3 vehicle here. You know, it started with HE shells that do, you know, if it penetrates, it does 348 damage minimum. If it doesn't penetrate, it does 58. But the maximum it can do is 283. So these vehicles, they're not crippled. There's no M3 Lees in this game. You know, you don't have that frustrating. Again, this is something about keeping your player base happy. There's no frustrating grind to get the turret, and you have to unlock the turret in order to get the gun. And you have to unlock the gun in order to get something else. And it's It's never-ending grind. Obsidian, I think, have probably taken the decision to say, look, let's make everybody viable right from the start. And another thing I want to add to that, this is another thing, is that Matchmaker, unless the Matchmaker is struggling in quieter times, it's +1, -1 only. So you generally are not going to go up against tanks 2 tiers higher than you, but if you do, you will still be able to do something. You'll still be able to have an effect on the game. Spotting in this game, and this is the next good thing, is super important. I think the spotting system is slightly bugged at the moment, but spotting is super important. The lighter tanks, the XM800Ts, you know, even the Leopards. I mean, the Leopard's got a great view range, and this is a sniper tank, so these guys can spot. But these guys, the Scorpions, the lights, what do they call them? Scout tanks. I can't remember what they're called, but the light tank equivalents. These are the ones that do the spotting and help the main battle tanks, who generally have really poor view range, do well. You know, I mean, what's the view range on? This is a bad example. The M60 is actually quite good. Look at T62. Another bad example, Vision 432. Yeah, okay. Generally, the main battle tanks need scouts to spot for them. So that's another nice thing. Everything has synergy, and it works. It just seems to work in this game. I think I've come to the end of the list there, pretty much. Oh no, one last thing is that vehicles render even though there's no UI marker on them in some cases. I can't remember quite what the reasoning for this is. I think if vehicles fire when they're not being spotted by anybody, they actually render on the map anyway. I think. But I don't know. Somebody will be able to correct me. So for some reason, you will get un-UI marked rendered vehicles for a short space of time. And I think that's really nice. It makes it a lot more realistic. You don't get these kind of Klingon cloaking vehicles. I've not noticed that so much. It's much less noticeable in Armoured Warfare than it is in World of Tanks. You know, we've all seen it. IS-3s disappearing in the middle of a field in World of Tanks. So there we have it. So that, believe it or not, was about 21 reasons, all mixed together, why you should play, or at least give Armoured Warfare a go. Especially if you're getting maybe a bit fed up with World of Tanks, or maybe you get a bit bored, or Arty frustrates you, or XVM frustrates you. Definitely worth a play. It's free, why not? But certainly my experience was I started playing Armoured Warfare and I found certain things quite hard to get to grips with. I found it to be maybe a little bit less clear in the rendering. The graphics on World of Tanks do seem to be a little bit clearer. I can't put a finger on it, but certainly that's my experience. But as I've played Armoured Warfare more and more, you get to understand the maps, you get to know the maps, and I think map knowledge is quite important on this. You get to know where you'll be spotted, what the capabilities of your vehicle are, and what your role is on the battlefields. Main battle tanks, you've got to be careful that there's no mouse, you know, super heavy armoured all round. Most main battle tanks are quite quick. Most of them are actually quite poorly armoured on the sides and the rear. So yeah, it's a very nice game. You find your niche in the game and you kind of get used to it and you have a lot of fun. So there we go, that's my list. Hope you found the video useful or informative. I might actually list out all 21 things in the vehicle description so you can see more clearly what the heck I was actually talking about. Anyway, leave a like or leave a comment and I will catch you hopefully on the battlefield, but if not, I'll see you on the next video. Cheers, bye.